You say, how can I do something?
Yes.
And what I'm saying is, how can a three-dimensional object do anything?
And yet there are experiences, happenings, as you say.
Happening is right.
And what decides the happening?
Your destiny, God's will, cosmic law.
Is that the karma you're talking about?
No.
Then?
The karma I'm talking about, yes, but not the karma you are talking about.
Which karma am I talking about?
You are talking about your karma, my karma, his karma, her karma, for which he is paying.
And which karma you are talking about?
Karma means a happening. Karma means an action. An action happens. Nobody does it.
Yeah.
Therefore, evolution is a continuous cause and action. But the cause and action, neither the cause nor the action, is an individual one. It is a happening. Therefore, the theory of evolution is correct. Something happens which leads to another happening. And the second thing happening becomes the cause of the third happening. Third happening becomes the cause of the fourth happening. But it's a happening which is supposed to happen, and it happens. It is not Ramesh doing anything or Ashok doing anything. But this corruption of this understanding has made you the doer of your action, me the doer of my action, and made life miserable for us.
Knowing fully well that is this doership, that is, should I say, the downfall of the...
No, the doership is the cause of unhappiness.
Yeah.
The
Have you
sense
got-
of personal doership is the cause of unhappiness.
How does one get rid of the doership, if at all one can? Have you got rid of? That's second question.
It has happened to me. I have not got rid of anything. I have not got anything. Whatever I have, whatever I don't have, is a happening. The most important thing. This is the point. That is why I told you. A successful man is very interesting. You go to read about it in the paper. So a successful doctor, successful man, he said, give us the benefit of your experience. How did you become such a big man? How does he say? First, I am an intelligent man. Two, I deliberately think on whatever I want to do. Three, I have stamina. I work hard on it. I don't let outside matters disturb my one aim. And a list of other good qualities. And that is why I am a successful man. I wouldn't do that. I would ask him one question. I have one problem, sir. I have admired you for a long time, but so happened that I have very few of the qualities that you have mentioned. But I have money. Where can I buy them? Where can I buy your qualities? Where can I buy the qualities which have made you such a success? What's the answer? It happened. A collection of those qualities happened to happen in a body-mind organism, because it was the destiny of that body-mind organism, according to God's will or cosmic law, that he will be a success.
But isn't purushartha or self-effort required in that direction also?
Yes, but even that purushartha will happen if it is supposed to happen. A three-dimensional object cannot have purushartha.
Explain.
Purushartha is effort being made.
Yeah.
Everybody cannot make purushartha.
Why? Effort?
Yes,
It could be physical or
Yes.
mental, intellectual.
but the quality and quantity of that effort, who has control over it? Quality and quantity of the effort. Do you have control over it? No. Does anyone have any control over the quality and quantity of the effort he makes? No. The quality and quantity of the effort is a happening. Happening strictly according to your destiny, God's will, cosmic law. Therefore, for you to be a successful, for you to be a sage, certain things are necessary. So whether those necessary things happen or not, including purushartha, is your destiny, God's will, cosmic law.
Can I ask a personal question?
Please.
What is the difference between Ramesh pre-retirement from Bank of India and Ramesh post-retirement? From very little that I know of you, I thought post-retirement Ramesh started going more in the direction of the questions, the queries.
Yes.
And that was Purushartha as I saw it.
Yes, that's right. But that Purushartha happened. That Purushartha need not have happened.
So
but it did happen.
So what I perceive as a self-effort that I am putting in is happening.
I could quite easily. I was crazy about golf.
About?
Golf.
Golf.
Game of golf.
Golf.
G-O-L-F.
Yeah, gentlemen only. Ladies forbidden.
Oh no.
When it started in Scotland, that's how it started.
But there have been ladies championships
of course.
for years.
Now, yes.
For ladies championships for years. So I could quite easily have concentrated on golf, but I happened not to. I happened to say, now I shall find out what is happiness, and I want to be happy. It happened. I could quite easily have gone for golf, but I didn't.
Very true. 10 years I tried to play sitar, nothing happened. So I didn't go beyond Saregama.
That was your destiny. Whereas a nephew of mine, at the age of 3 and a half, was playing tabla without anyone teaching him tabla.
I asked you about prodigy yesterday. So it's happening.
It's a happening.
But tell me, Ramesh, if everyone took this happening very seriously, then where would, don't you think we will be encouraging fatalism? That is not, it's not destined to be, it's happening. Aren't we encouraging fatalism that way?
So what is fatalism?
That's, whatever has to happen will happen.
You use the word fatalism, it comes almost every time. What is fatalism?
That's what I said just now.
Tell me what is fatalism?
Whatever has to happen, happen. I do self-effort and still nothing is happening.
Therefore, yes. Therefore, what?
So what is the point? Leave it to him. If it has to happen, it will happen.
Therefore, what it means is, in a given situation, Ashok is free to do what he likes. Ashok is free to say, if nothing is in my hand, why should I do anything? And Ashok does nothing instead of something.
Ashok does?
Nothing instead of something.
Yeah.
But he does nothing.
But don't you think
he does nothing or something? No choice. Whatever the reason you decide to do nothing could be what you call fatalism, Or you could say, I just don't have the time, I just don't have the strength, I just don't have the intellect for doing it. Therefore I do nothing. And you say, since nothing is in my control, I do nothing. But the fact of the matter is, even those who do something and consider that they have done something, that doing something is worthless in practice, because the result of what you have done never been in your control. Therefore, whether you do something or not do something is worthless in practice. Fact number one, the human being has total free will to do whatever he likes or not to do whatever he likes. Fact number two, the result of the action or inaction has never been in your control.
What is prarabdha?
Therefore, your free will, which you certainly have, is worthless in practice. And then I said to myself, I told you everything I do on my own. I asked myself, that is quite clear, common sense. My free will is worthless in practice. So I said, let me find out if my free will has any value, at least in theory. So I said, on what factors do I decide to do something at any moment? And the only answers I could get was my genes and my conditioning. Genes, I had no control over being born to particular parents. Therefore I had no control over the genes. And as a doctor, you know, more and more research goes on to establish tremendous power for the genes, something which is inconceivable. I think it started with trying to find out a gene for a particular disease, cancer, Alzheimer's, so that you can do something about it. But more and more money went into research, and they came across some fantastic results. Recently I talked in the morning papers, not in special. It said, whether your child is going to be a bully in school or a victim of that bully. Meaning, whether your boy is going to be a despot in life or the victim of a despot in your genes. But the most important thing I read is, am I faithful to my wife? I don't take any credit. My genes. If I'm not faithful to my wife, I don't have to feel guilty. My genes. But I must remember it applies equally to my wife. So what I mean is, any action that I thought I did, when I found into the theory of it, I said 90% of it is genes, over which I had no control.
But then,
and 10% is conditioning. Just as I had no control over being born to particular parents, and therefore similarly I had no control over being born to particular parents in a particular class of society, upper class, upper middle class, lower middle class, or low class, in which society the behavior I learned, I could see the way my parents behaved, my close relatives behave, the way the people in that society behave. That is what I call conditioning, and including the conditioning which I received from, everybody receives, from church or temple. This is good, that is bad, you must do this, if you do this it is a sin and God will put you in hell, God will punish you. So in theory, Whatever I decide to do in a given situation, in theory, is based on two factors, genes and conditions, over which I have no control. Therefore, it's worthless. So I came to the conclusion, my apparent free will, which I certainly have, I'm free to do whatever I want in a situation, both in theory and practice, is worthless. But the fact remains that I have to have total free will for the mechanism of daily living to happen.
For the mechanism of?
Daily living to happen. Therefore, for daily living to happen, God was forced to give every human being total free will, sane or insane. God was forced to give every human being. But the result of it was never in his control. Therefore, every human being does have total free will. But both in theory and practice it is worthless. That is
What do we understand by destiny? Or is destiny and prarabdha the same?
Yes, but destiny is the same. But prarabdha, if you ask someone what is prarabdha, they'll say, what is prarabdha based on? They'll say prarabdha is based on what you have been doing in your previous birth.
Previous births.
Yeah.
What is your take on previous birth?
There have been previous births, yes. But Ramesh has had no previous birth. Ramesh will have no previous birth. Every birth will have a new ego, where I differ totally from
Gautam Buddha's Charak, his kathas.
I'm not a student of Buddha.
Yeah.
But what I'm saying is, and that is, I think, even physically proved, scientifically proved, that the ego is not born with the body. The ego comes into the picture when the ego, with a sense of personal doership, me, mine, comes only at the age of two and a half, between 1 year and 9 months and 2 years after that.
So before that, what is there? What is id?
Just a three-dimensional object.
What is id then? Child's ego, as they say? Id, 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 ego, superego, that's what I have heard. I have no clear concept of that.
No. So therefore, what I am saying is, the ego did not come with the body. The ego came in later. Therefore, every new birth has a new ego, which is concerned with only that life. Therefore, an ego cannot have a previous birth, cannot have a fresh birth. Now, which is the ego? Important part. What is the ego? The ego is the identification of the source. Call it consciousness, call it energy, call it God. Identification of this unmanifest source with an object in the manifestation, a human object in the manifestation. Ego is identified consciousness. Impersonal consciousness is the source. Impersonal consciousness identified with this body-mind organism is the ego called a soul.
Why does it happen only around 1 year and 9 months or so and not before that? Brain is developing, isn't it?
Say that again?
Why? You said the ego comes only around 1 year and 9 months or around 2 years.
Yes.
Before that there is no ego.
Yes.
So I said, why does it happen only around that time?
You'll have to ask God. You'll have to ask God. I can only tell you what happens. And what happens is that the ego comes much after the baby is born. Therefore, they do not go together. The birth and the ego are two separate things. Therefore, after the baby is born, destiny goes the very first time. The moment a conception happens, according to my concept, destiny starts. Destiny of that conception, whether the fetus will survive or not, or whether it will be thrown out, is the destiny of that fetus.
It should have started much before that, when the sperm was there and the ovum was there, wasn't it?
Hmm?
Destiny should have started much earlier than that, when there are 200 million sperms per ml of the father's semen coming, and one of those 200 million sperms.
It is also destiny, agreed,
yeah.
I agree.
Yeah.
I agree. Therefore, destiny starts as early as you can imagine.
Hmm.
So, but briefly, whether the fetus will be turned into a baby or thrown out is the destiny.
Yes.
And if the baby is born, then what happens to the baby? How long it will live? What will happen every moment of that life? How that life will end? Normally, or disease, or accident, or murder, or suicide, is already destined. Is already destined.
And those people who can diagnose this, the astrologers, the real astrologers, there's also a happening. There's also a happening.
A gift of God.
Gift of God.
A gift of God. But I don't think God has been foolish to give His entire gift to anybody.
Correct?
Therefore, every year I had a personal friend, a very good astrologer, 50 years ago. So I asked him once, what is the percentage of your, what do you think? 50%.
50%, you said that.
Then at that time, the medical, so he said, ask a doctor, an honest doctor will confess.
I told you less than is
50%.
Yeah. When we talk of ego, is I-ness the same as
the meanness, the I-ness, the me factor is the ego. Me, as different from you and he and she,
yeah.
is the ego.
Me is the I, isn't it?
Me, he, she, you are all fundamentally the soul,
Yeah.
identified with each body, mind, organism
Yeah.
as a separate entity.
The relation, I found this title quite interesting, the relationship between I and me. I have not read it. But my concept was this I and me is the same.
No, I is the source, impersonal consciousness, which is everybody.
Yeah.
Whereas every me, 6 billion me's, are identified consciousness. Same I, identified with 6 billion me's, have become 6 million egos. And daily living means interhuman relationships, inter-ego relationships.
But when I say I did this, I did that.
That is,
What?
you as the me is the doer.
Yeah.
Me is the doer.
Yeah.
But when the understanding happens, you realize every doing is a doing by the source, which I would call a happening. No human being, no identified consciousness, no ego is capable of doing anything.
In this context, I came across a beautiful, I will not call it a simile or something, but someone told me that the same concept, you said, 1 year and 9 months, approximately 2 years, that ego comes. They said before that, we have written a board over here saying to let, and then that ego comes as an I, or as you said, me. So that two let in between there is I and it becomes toilet.
What is the significance of this joke?
When the ego comes, the whole thing, that beautiful life, it becomes toilet, it becomes confusion.
When the ego comes, life becomes a toilet.
And there is no choice, he said.
That is the point. That is where I started. I shall not talk of soul, this, that and the other, Atma. I don't care a damn. I am concerned with this body, which is a part of the mechanism, of the manifestation, and Ramesh. Ramesh cannot be part of the manifestation. Therefore, Ramesh must be something connected with the unmanifest soul.
Why can't Ramesh be a part of the manifestation?
Because the manifestation is a body, is an object. Ramesh is not an object. Ramesh is not the object is part of the manifestation. So I am concerned only with two, this body, mind, object and Ramesh. Having assumed that the unmanifest singularity has become the manifest duality and multiplicity. What is remaining is body, mind, organism and me. And I am seeking happiness for myself. I am not concerned with any third item which confuses the issue. So I started with saying, I, Ramesh, want happiness in this body, mind, organism, in this life. So the first thing I know what pleasure is. I've enjoyed pleasures, and yet I'm seeking happiness. Even if I had enjoyed all the pleasures in life, would I still not be seeking this happiness? Therefore, the most important conclusion, before I even took the first step, the most important conclusion was the happiness I'm seeking has nothing to do with the pleasure in life. If the happiness I'm seeking has nothing to do with the pleasure in life, it means happiness has nothing to do with what happens in life. Because life itself means only pleasure or pain. Therefore I repeat again and again and again, the most important conclusion, before I took the first step, was my acceptance that the happiness I'm seeking has nothing to do with what happens in life, but in my attitude to life. Most important. Next was equally difficult. What do I mean by attitude to life? Too general an expression. Philosophers may love it, but I found it a great difficulty. I can't, unless I know what I mean by what attitude to life. Then after a great deal of thought, I came to the one answer which I was able to accept, and that is my attitude to life can only mean my attitude towards the other.
Towards the other?
Yeah. The daily living means me and the other. The other may be my father or parent or brother or sister or someone close to me, my wife or son, or a neighbor or someone.
Only human you mean? Or even an insect, an animal?
No, I'm not concerned with philosophy. I'm talking of happiness for this person. So, now I'm talking of what do I mean by my attitude to life. And I decided my attitude to life can only mean my attitude towards the other. Whether the other is a close relative or a neighbor or someone connected with my business or profession or a total stranger. So my happiness depends on my attitude towards the other, who may be the closest relative or the farthest stranger.
And that has to be an attitude of...
Wait a minute. And then I said, you see, the reason I'm able to tell you and with some confidence is I went step by step, very gradually. So I said to myself, what has been my attitude towards the other so far, which has not brought me the happiness, but unhappiness? See what I mean?
Yes.
I came to the conclusion, my happiness depends on my attitude towards the other, whoever the other is. And what has been my attitude towards the other so far? And the only conclusion I came to is my attitude towards the other. In fact, the attitude of any human being towards the other has been based on suspicion, fear, rivalry.
Rivalry.
Yes. Suspicion. He may take something, fear. He may kill me if he wants something from me. Fear. He would take something away from me. Rivalry. He may want something which I want. And we see in the papers, every morning, a brother has killed a brother, a father has killed a son, property rights, or love affair. Whatever it is quite clear that the closest relatives have killed each other. Therefore, my attitude towards the other has not been one of harmony, has not been one of harmony.
Right.
Therefore, the only way I can be happy in this world if my attitude towards the other is totally harmonious. Which what does it mean? It means I shall be happy in this world if I am able to treat the other like myself. See the conclusion I came to?
Yes. Beautiful.
So beautiful that I decided that it cannot be done.
Why did you decide so?
Because for millions of years this has been the attitude.
But then what is the meaning of
There-
don't do unto others what
No.
you won't do unto you?
Yeah,
Very nice to
very nice to hear.
Yeah.
You hear this and up to the other.
Yeah.
Not acceptable.
To the ego?
Yeah, the ego is not acceptable. Except the ego says, in a situation, I do what I want to do in order to get what I want. So, my happiness depends on my having an attitude of total harmony with the other,
Yeah.
treating the other like myself.
Yes.
Universal brotherhood.
But this is not possible, you said?
Now wait a minute, I said, at that point, I said it's not possible. It's not possible. Therefore, I decided I shall not pursue happiness anymore. At one point I pursued enlightenment and had frustration. Now, for a few months, I pursued happiness and have again come to frustration. Therefore, it means that God never intended the human being to be happy. That is why He has made life so difficult. What is the basis of life? Uncertainty. Nobody knows what the next moment is going to bring, pleasure or pain. Nobody knows whether he will be alive next moment or not. Nobody knows the total amount of pleasure and pain one is expected to experience in my whole life. Everything is predetermined. The movie is already in the can. In fact, God has made life so difficult that He does not want the human being to be happy.
And yet we...
Therefore, I decided the only thing to do is be grateful to God for putting me in a position where I am reasonably comfortable in life live the way now I'm retired, take life easy, take things easy. If there is pleasure, enjoy it. If there is pain, suffer it. And wait until there is no more daily living.
And then the happiness followed you?
And I accepted that with total sincerity as a fact, not with a sense of complaint against God. Let me be clear. This is the way it is. With the greatest of sincerity, with the greatest of humility, I accepted it. And then, call it my destiny, God's will, cosmic law. I had a thought from outside, which means thought from God. So, you are wrong. My intention has never been for the human being to be unhappy. On the contrary, according to my plan, happiness is the birthright of every human being. But it is based on one factor. It is based only on one factor. And that factor has not been accepted by the human being. And that is that everything is happening according to God's will, cosmic law. The human being is incapable of doing anything. That the human being has not accepted. Therefore he is unhappy. That's all. And then something was added later. And what was added was, the cruel joke is that this factor, this one factor, is the basis of every religion. And yet we have had religious wars for 10,000 years. Inverted commas closed. So in this, the point that I had was, this one factor is the basis of every religion. Earlier I had decided that there cannot be, I thought about it, that's why I'm telling you. Any question you ask, I have already thought about it. Earlier...
This was going to be the last question, how to attain happiness, you just solved it without me asking.
Why do I have this concern about what happened? Because that is part of the body-mind organism. Then my question, earlier I had decided that there cannot be one single basis for all religions. Otherwise we wouldn't have had religious wars. Therefore the conclusion I had was, all religions do not have a single basis. But God told me that there is a basis. So my next step was clear. What is the basis of every religion? God tells me there is one. And then I came across 4 beautiful letters from the Bible, which I had earlier come across God knows how many times, but the significance of which had never reached my heart.
This too?
Thy will be done. Meaning, nothing can happen unless it is the will of God. And I added cosmic law. Nothing can happen unless it is the will of God or the cosmic law. The human being is incapable of doing any deed. And I said to myself, that is truly my concept of enlightenment. And at that moment it struck me. It had always bothered me. Why is it that out of so many masters, not one master has been able to tell me that I have come across what is enlightenment and what will enlightenment do for me in this life as happiness that I didn't have before. Nobody could tell me that. But at that moment I knew why. Because enlightenment has never been a certified event. How could anybody tell me with confidence that this is enlightenment? You can say he is a doctor, but no one could tell me he is an enlightened person. Because enlightenment was never a certified being, certified event. Therefore, enlightenment is a concept which every single person has to have. And the only proof of enlightenment is happiness, which I have been pursuing. So I ask myself, what is the happiness I have been having since I have been able to accept totally that I am not the doer? Nobody is a doer. I wrote it down. What is enlightenment? Enlightenment means that everything in the world is happening according to God's will, cosmic law. How it affects whom, for better or worse, is again according to God's will, cosmic law. Through which body, mind, organism, through which person the happening happens, which the society calls your action, my action, his action or her, is again according to God's will, cosmic law. The human being is incapable of doing any deed.
You just now mentioned that you have understood that you are not the doer.
Yes.
That means you have got rid of your ego. Because ego we just now saw at the beginning, that is the sense of doership, that I am the doer.
Therefore, what has happened is my ego is still there. I am still the Ramesh, doing exactly what I was doing before, accepting whatever is happening as a happening. Ramesh still has been living his life.
What kind of ego?
And the ego.
What kind of ego would you call
this? That is the point.
That's what?
That is the point. Therefore, previously, masters had told me, enlightenment means the end of separation. Enlightenment means the end of the ego, which I could not accept. Ramana Maharshi lived for 50 years in the ashram as the same separate entity who started the ashram. And if I had called him by name, he would have responded. Therefore, I said, enlightenment cannot mean the end of the ego.
Correct.
Therefore, my question was, what was the difference, what is the difference between the sage living as an ego and the ordinary person also living as an ego? The answer for me was simple. In the ego of the sage, the sense of personal doership has been uprooted.
Okay.
Therefore, the sage lives as an ego, accepting whatever happens anywhere, not as someone doing anything. Therefore, not condemning anybody for anything, neither himself nor the other. Following that, I found that I didn't condemn myself for anything, I didn't condemn anyone else for anything. Therefore, I had no guilt, I did not carry any more burden of guilt and shame for my actions, pride for my actions, or hatred for others' actions. And the absence of pride, absence of guilt and shame, and absence of hatred for others was indeed the happiness I've been seeking.
Lajja, Grina, Bhoy. Lajja, Grina, Bhoy. Lajja, shame, hatred and fear, as you said.
And yet, I'm still afraid of this lajja, whatever you said.
I didn't say, Ramakrishna said, Lajja, Grina, Bhoy, Tin Tatte Noi. Once you have eliminated this thing.
No, I haven't eliminated that. Why? Because I still have to live in the society which expects me to have that lajja.
So wear clothes.
So I wear clothes. So, the point I am making is the total destruction of hatred for myself, for my actions, hatred for the others for their actions. Hatred, the absence of hatred is the happiness we all want. And the absence of hatred that arises through interhuman relationships. Me and the other. Relationship between me and the other creates hatred. And once I accept that I am incapable of doing any deed, the other is incapable of doing any deed, I can't condemn myself for anything. I can't condemn the other for anything. And absence of condemnation, absence of hatred means happiness through peace of mind.
But you said because you want to live in the society, you cannot get rid of it altogether just now?
Therefore, no, what I mean is, in a given situation, I still do what I feel like doing.
Yeah.
But the result and the consequence, society judges it as bad. Society punishes me. I have to accept that punishment. If it's pleasure, I enjoy the pleasure. I accept the pleasure, I accept the punishment. Without condemning anybody for anything. And so long as I have to live in that society, I have to accept the society's verdict. Therefore, I still have to fear the society in making my decision in a given situation. Before I make a decision, I have to decide what will society think. But what I don't have to think is, what will God think? Because it is God doing whatever is happening. Therefore, with this total acceptance, I don't have to fear my conscience. I don't have to fear God, because God is bringing about whatever is supposed to happen. Therefore, responsibility, when we talk of responsibility is always of two kinds. Responsibility to my conscience and responsibility to God, nothing.
Then why fear the society?
Therefore, why fear God? Therefore, I don't fear God. And if I don't fear God, nothing has stopped me from loving God as my Creator. But I still have to live my life. Therefore, I have to accept whatever the society gives. I may do my best to get more pleasure and less pain. But what I get, I can never know. And I have to live my life in the society. Therefore, I don't have to fear God, but I do have to fear the society. Therefore, in deciding what to do in a given situation, I must think of the society and do what I want.
And but then if it's the happening, where does society remain? Like Ramakrishna Paramahansa, sometimes he used to go naked, move around Dakshineshwar without his loincloth also.
Yeah.
Now if he feared society, he was not doing it consciously. It was a happening. So where does fear of the society come vis-a-vis this?
Fear of the society come. If there was a law at that time that nobody was supposed to go naked, the policeman would have come and taken him to the jail. Therefore, the society's decision is based on existing social regulations and legal provisions. You act, the result is there and the consequence of it.
Yeah.
The society judges the consequence. According to what? According to the existing social regulations and legal provisions. Similarly, because of legal provisions, Ramana Maharshi was once taken to the law court, and he was made to wear a loincloth and not a langoti. So he has to respect the society. According to the society, Ramana Maharshi was taken to the law court. When he came back, he threw it out.
Ramesh, one thing, now you said everything is happening.
Yes.
Okay. Now, I don't know your take on Paramahamsa Yogananda, who wrote the autobiography of a yogi. Now, he had said that nothing will happen to his mortal remains even after he dies for a period of 1 month. And it was his mortal remains were studied during the 1 month period when it was kept for people to observe it, and nothing happened till that 1 month.
That is the concept of a three-dimensional object by the name of Yogananda.
What I'm saying is, if That was the concept, and that is what was verified
That was the
scientifically.
concept of a three-dimensional object named Yogananda. Was it certified?
Yes.
By whom? By God?
No, no. What I'm saying is that the body did not undergo decomposition that was certified.
Oh, that was a gift of God for that particular individual.
And he was made aware of that, you mean to say. That, yes, I have this gift.
Yes. Just as an astrologer knows that he is the gift of God
Correct.
to see into the future
Correct.
or certain experiences. Certain experiences happen. Experiences of oneness with God happen. But they are still experiences, which I call free samples.
Samples.
Free samples from God. So, if I have experience and I have the wisdom to know that they are free samples, I will accept them as such and go on my way. But what happens? Almost 100 cases out of 100.
We'll go with the free sample.
They want more of them. And nobody can demand more free samples. Therefore they become frustrated. They write books on my spiritual experiences. They are not spiritual experiences. They are
Fantasy.
not fantasy. They are experiences of oneness with God as gift of God. As gift of God. Therefore, you can never be God. You can never have an experience of God. But if you have, it's a gift from God which is temporary. The nearest I can go to God, the nearest I can be God, with the total acceptance, is never to be unconnected with the source.
Is that what Ramakrishna meant when he answered Vivekananda's question, which was, have you seen God? And he said, yes. As I see you, I have seen God. The only difference is I see Him more clearly.
That is, the maximum I can hope is to have this connection with God, which is the ego. The ego is the source of God, connected with a particular body, mind, organism as a separate entity with doership.
Yes.
When the doership is gone, the connection is never broken.
Yes.
The connection is broken whenever this question of doership happens, either mine or yours. If I think I have done something great and I feel pride, connection is broken.
But you say connection is broken, but in spite of the fact remains that all the thoughts are given through that connection only, through that source only.
The connection is broken. It gets again connected, again gets broken. But if I am totally accept that I am not the doer, the other is not the doer, the connection is never broken. Therefore, there is never unhappiness. Happiness is constant. Happiness through peace of mind. Sukha Shanti. Okay.
Beautiful.
It is.
It is
It is so beautiful and so simple
simple.
that people find it difficult to accept.
It is so simple.
I told you I had any question. So your question can be, if it is really simple, I know it's so simple, why is it so difficult for people to accept that they are not the doers? Valid question, isn't it?
Yes.
I asked myself that question, and the answer was that the sense of personal doership is so deeply ingrained in one. And the actual fact of daily living means almost in every situation, I do whatever I feel like doing. I do it. I have to decide what I want. I have to decide between alternatives. I have to choose the alternative and I have to do it. So the doing is almost the intrinsic part of daily living. Doing is such an intrinsic part of daily living that it is difficult to accept that I am not the doer.
What would be the easiest way to say that, okay, I do, but that's it? Or would it be right to say that I am just the machine?
No.
And he is the operator?
I do it. I have done it. As if I am the doer. As soon as you have done it, if you remember, I have done it. As if I am the doer, but I know I am not the doer.
Okay, beautiful.
But I know I am not the doer. But for the mechanism to happen, I have to do it.
Yes.
For the mechanism to happen, for a robot to, I have to press a button. But having pressed the button, I know that the robot is not doing anything.
If I pray before doing anything, Lord, think through me, speak through me, and act through me.
That is your concept.
Yeah. But is it not going towards the same thing
No.
that you are the doer?
Yes.
Through me?
But praying means you are the doer and you expect something.
Praying means
Praying means begging.
if you are doing something for yourself, if you are praying for yourself,
Or praying for someone else.
yes,
If you are praying that your friend who is sick be well,
yeah,
you are begging God to cure your friend.
so one should not pray.
Praying as begging is worthless.
Correct.
Why?
It's better to go and beg them.
No. For one reason, because what has to happen has already happened.
Yes.
The movie is already in the can.
Yeah.
Even God can't change it.
Yes.
Therefore, praying as begging is waste.
Yeah.
Total waste.
Yes.
Then, miracles happen. He went to Saint so-and-so, who has recently been made a saint. And the man who was sick was all right. Similar case happened in the case of Ramana Maharshi. A woman took her dying son, who was obviously dying, and he placed him at the feet of Ramana Maharshi, was in that doing something to the. 10 minutes later, the boy got up and started looting. So people surrounding there, Ramana's miracle, Ramana's miracle. Ramana Maharshi wanted to make it clear he had nothing to do with it. Can you imagine one of the modern gurus, especially in an ashram, if this had happened?
Newspaper.
There would have been ocean of people wanting to.
Media. But that brings us back to what is prayer. What kind of prayer?
But Ramana Maharshi made it clear. You know what he said? He said there was not even a sankalpa. I did not even have a wish that the boy should recover. I had nothing to do with it. I am not the guilty person. I did not even have a sankalpa. Therefore, he is being brought here, and the happening was his destiny, God's will, cosmic law.
No, but we are talking about prayer. You said prayer as a begging is useless, worthless.
Yes.
Prayer as what is real power?
Prayer is something which arises as a matter of gratitude.
Uh-huh.
I see so many people on the beggar
Yeah.
and so many people. A prayer arises of gratitude to God for putting me in a situation where I am so much better, so much more comfortable in life. So the only real prayer is a prayer of gratitude which arises.
Can I share one personal experience with you?
Please.
This happened in 1993.
Yeah.
In 1992, there was Babri Masjid demolition.
Yeah.
And December 6th, and subsequently there were riots in Mumbai, and in our society there were 3 Muslim families.
Yeah.
Those days I was just learning about meditation, reading a lot about meditation. I was not initiated into meditation, so I used to do some things on my own. And I used to feel very sad about these 3 Muslim families because they were getting crank calls and threatening calls and things like that. So I went to them, each of them personally, and told them that anytime they had any problem, they should think of me and I'll do whatever I can to help them. This went on, and towards the last week of December, I started having fever, and this went on for almost 10 days. I was being treated by an MD physician, and then went on for quite some time, and one day in the morning, the fever was so high, it was around 21st of Jan or something, and I felt that my mind was all blurred. I got a call from my staff member in the clinic asking some directions, and her name was Padmaja. I was talking to her, and suddenly I felt I was talking something else only, not about the clinic.
Yes.
I realized that, and I said, Padmaja, I'll talk to you later. I kept on the phone. After that, another friend called me because we were organizing some meeting, and his name was Pradeep. Again, the same thing happened. I said, Pradeep, I'll talk to you later. And this time my wife, who is also a doctor, was sitting next to me. Bharati is her name. And I said, Bharati, there's some problem. I want to say some certain words, and some other words are coming. So she called the doctor, and they decided to get me admitted to Hinduja Hospital. Now, only this 2 calls memory is there. One more memory is that Bharati was sitting on my study table and she was crying. And I have never felt the connection so strong as that time, where I looked at him and I said that I'm being taken to the hospital. There was an atmosphere of fear in the house, as I saw in the background Bharati crying. I said, I'm not afraid, because I know that nothing is going to happen. I literally did like this, I'll go to the hospital and I'll come back, because you are right here. Next 2.5 days I was in Hinduja Hospital ICU, coma, semi-coma. The 3rd day in the morning when I wake up, Bharati is sitting next to me in the ICU. I said, I'm feeling better. She could not believe it. I said, get the insurance papers. And she said, yes, if he's talking about insurance, he is better. The same evening, Dr. V.R. Joshi, who is a renowned physician, he put me in the general ward from the ICU. The next day he discharged me. When I went for the first follow-up and asked him what was his diagnosis, he said, our diagnosis was acute viral encephalitis, the inflammation of the brain with virus infection. People die in meningitis. This was encephalitis, means he said mostly it's the downhill course, especially when the person going in coma.
Usually it is fatal.
Fatal. And he said, we have discussed this case as a miracle case. When I came back home, the first instinctive reaction was, I put my foot in the home, I rushed to my room and stood in front of my Lord Dattatreya, and there were tears flowing down. And I said, thanks.
So that is a prayer of gratitude.
Yes, that's what, when you said that, I remember that.
That is a prayer of gratitude which arises. And that is the only, according to me, true prayer. Not the prayer which is begging.
Very true.
And what happened was an experience which had to happen according to your destiny, God's will, cosmic law. Okay?
Yes, okay.
Right.
With your permission, sir.
So,
you have time after all this big discussion?
yes, go ahead.
Okay. What you have written in your books and all that, whatever I have read from your books, it says about the same thing that you've been talking, that everything is happening.
Yeah.
But how does one practice it so easily? Like we when there's doership, like you said, so ingrained in us, then it is happening. It's difficult to accept, and then to even practice it, it's even more difficult. And secondly, when you say
Why?
genes,
Why?
it's difficult to practice.
Yeah. Why?
Because first of all, you have to accept it.
No, because a three-dimensional object cannot do any practicing. Fundamentally, a human being is a human object, one kind of object in millions of objects. Fundamentally, there are two aspects. Fundamentally, every human being is a three-dimensional object. That the other perspective is, it is the source functioning through the three-dimensional object as a separate entity, as the ego. So on the one side, you are the ego, which is connected to the source. The other side is a three-dimensional object. So when you say, I want to do something, whatever it is, you have to remember that you are a three-dimensional object. So that if anything is to happen, it will happen according to the will of the source, who is connected to you as the ego. So the ego has to accept totally. Whatever happens is happening according to the will of God and not my doing. Therefore the question of, in such circumstances, what do I do, is a useless question.
Then what about genes and conditioning? Isn't that also a happening?
It is indeed. It is indeed. Over which you have no control. That is why whatever you do is fundamentally, theoretically based on your genes and conditioning, over which you have no control. Therefore you really cannot call it your action.
Then again, free will. Then where does free will come from?
Free will is what God was forced to give you so that daily living can happen. Daily living cannot happen unless every human being is free to do whatever he wants in any situation. He is free to do it. But what God has done it, He has given you the free will to do it, but you have no control over the result.
And then it's a murderer who has a free will, he murders, and a saint who is so spiritual. Even this is a
The
happening.
spirituality doesn't come in there. It comes in that the murder had to happen. And the murder had to happen through that particular body-mind organism, was the destiny of that body-mind organism according to the will of God. Therefore, God did the action of murder through that particular body-mind organism. But what the society will do about that is his destiny. It may be that for reasons of some not enough evidence or something like that, the murderer may be allowed to go free. So it is the destiny of the murderer to commit the murder and yet go free. Or it may be the destiny of an innocent man to be executed, hanged for a murder he did not commit. Either a man who committed a murder goes scot-free, or someone who did not commit a murder gets punished. Whatever happens is a happening which had to happen according to a cosmic law, the basis of which is so vast and so complex that the human brain can never know. Therefore, it is stupid to ask, why did God create a man like Hitler, because of whom 80 million Jewish people lost their lives? Why does God create a situation where an innocent man is executed for a murder he did not commit? Why does God create handicapped children? What harm have they done? The answer is twofold. One, everything in the manifestation is a duality. So for a saint to do a good deed, there has to be a psychopath who does an evil deed. Because there are healthy children, there have to be handicapped children on the basis of duality.
But you are what you are because of your thoughts and desires.
Because of
Your thoughts.
your thoughts. Whose thoughts?
Your thoughts.
Three-dimensional object? Can a three-dimensional object think? Therefore, even those thoughts were supposed to happen.
So even karma is supposed to happen.
It is exactly therefore karma is a happening.
So actually we are just
Robots.
not even players. Where
You can say actors if you like.
actors. Where you're given a certain role and you just play it.
Actors doing their role according to a divine script.
Katputli.
Puppet.
Katputli is a puppet or a robot or an actor, whichever simile you like.
Like whenever you are in trouble or you are in pain or suffering, you say, why me?
Yeah.
Why me?
And what is the answer? Why not? What is the answer? Why not?
So then you should say, try me instead of why me.
Why not? Then in that case you have to accept that it had to happen. Therefore, I have to accept it and bear it as long as it is supposed to be there. I have to bear it.
And when something good happens to you, then you don't say, why me?
Exactly.
But then you get so much ego. I did it. And that's why I am where I am.
Therefore, the ego,
How to get rid of that ego?
who is to do that? A three-dimensional object cannot get rid of the
my
ego. It will happen only if it is supposed to happen. Otherwise it will not happen. You can never get away from it. Fundamentally, I am a three-dimensional object who cannot speak or listen. That's why in the Hindu thing, Tvameva karta, tvameva bhokta. You are the doer and you are the experiencer. You do the doing through one body-mind instrument and do the suffering through another body-mind instrument. Tvameva vakta, tvameva shrota. You are the speaker and you are the listener. It looks as if Ramesh is speaking and your name is
Chanda.
Chanda. Ramesh speaks, Chanda listens, Chanda speaks, Ramesh listens. It looks like it. But if both Chanda and Ramesh were in deep sleep or sedated into unconsciousness, neither of us would be able to speak or listen. Therefore, who does the speaking and the listening? Consciousness does the speaking through one instrument, listening through another. Speaking through one instrument, listening through another.
What is the difference between consciousness and awareness?
No, two different words for the same thing.
Same thing. Isn't awareness from the mind and consciousness from the heart?
You can make any distinction.
Okay.
You can make any distinction. You see now, in I am that, the author in his wisdom decided consciousness is what functions and awareness is the source. He made that distinction. So my publisher, who was the same, he said, would I please stick to the same distinction? I said, certainly not. So I said, it is consciousness functioning and consciousness as the source. But consciousness as awareness is the same thing. Then you can't separate the consciousness as consciousness and consciousness as this. So therefore all I could say was the functioning consciousness or non-functioning consciousness, consciousness and identified consciousness. But consciousness and awareness, according to my concept, are the same.
No difference.
No difference.
Can I just interject over here?
Mm-hmm.
You just now mentioned in Sanskrit that Bharta, Bhokta, but you are also a Maheshwara according to the verse in Gita. So what does he mean there?
I'm sorry?
Bharta, Bhokta, Maheshwara. So does he, Krishna, imply that you are the Maheshwara yourself?
No, you refers to the source. You refers to the source, not the three-dimensional object.
So the source itself is Bharta, Bhokta, Maheshwara.
That is the point. That
functioning
is
through you.
functioning through one, doing something through one object and suffering through another, or doing something through one and enjoying through the other. Pain or pleasure happening through one body mind, and the doer is another body mind.
And when you say attitude, about attitude, you change your attitude. So attitude you are referring only to human beings, not to
Yes,
nature or trees or animals.
No. Attitude is where the human being has the intellect and the sense of personal doership. The animal doesn't have either the intellect or the sense of personal doership.
So it boils down to everything that it's just happening.
That is the point. One. And two, a three-dimensional object cannot do anything. So if any questions arise during the day, you are welcome to come again and we'll deal with them. Okay?
Sure.
You have any questions?
Same
Please.
thing in some other words.
Please.
I mean, it is the same difficulty.
Please.
Like
Yes, sir. Your name is
my name is Keshav. Keshav.
Keshav. No, Swami Keshav? Or Swami Keshavananda? Anyway, yes. But you belong to an ashram, don't you?
No.
No.
I am very much ordinary householder.
Oh, I see.
Working in Hindustan Petroleum.
Oh, I see. Yes, Keshav.
Like they are telling, as you said, everything happening. When I wake up in the morning, normally, then thanks to the nice sleep, mind is fresh.
Yeah.
At that time, probably we can sort of realize that things are happening. Even my
Yes.
action like brushing, going and having a bath, even when I am having a bath, I am able to see that some force is moving and not me who is
The
doing.
first thing that you know that is happening is you happen to wake up.
But in course of the day,
Yes.
as I leave my house and get into the drudgery of work,
More and more
it
the
becomes
sense
a
of
doership.
personal doership gets deeper and deeper. Yes.
How do I increase that period from morning to 15 minutes to 24 hours? That's the question.
How can a three-dimensional object do anything? It will happen only if it is supposed to happen. That is how, again and again. How do I do this? How do I do? Again and again. How can a three-dimensional object do anything? It will happen only if it is supposed to happen. Until then, you have to accept it. Pleasure or pain.
But exercise your free will at the same time of not taking that onus. Exercise your free will at the same time of not taking the onus of being the doer.
Therefore, you do things as if you are the doer, knowing you are not the doer.
Right?
That is a practical.
Yeah.
Incidentally, a German genius,
Schopenhauer.
no,
Hans Weihinger.
Hans Weihinger, Dr. Hans Weihinger, a genius. I think he was a doctor also. He has written a book called The Philosophy of As If. Exactly this. You do everything as if you are the doer. The philosophy of as if. By you want to write down there?
Yeah.
I don't think you'll find a book in. I'll tell you what happened. I wanted to read the book.
Yeah.
So I couldn't get it anywhere. Then a friend of mine said, the Royal Asiatic Library is bound to have that book. So I'm a member of that, I'll get the book for you. So he went there and he found that the book was out of circulation, borrowed by someone for 6 months. And it wasn't there. So he said, we'll send for it. So he wrote, and the person who had borrowed it was one Professor Bhagwat, lady. So when the call came, she wanted to know, who wants it? According to her, nobody would want a book like that. She could hold it for her. Then, that's not all. Then the book I read was a fairly small one. Because they didn't have the whole thing. It was taken out the essence of it. So there was a German friend of mine. I told him about the book. And I said, it's a small book. So he wanted a book. He wanted the original book. So he went to several second-hand bookshops and finally he found one. And the book was 300 pages in German. So he had rewritten, he had expanded the subject to such an extent. Genius. Hans Weihinger.
Weihinger.
Weihinger, Weihinger. Hans Weihinger. The philosophy of as if. Basis is the same.
When you, sorry to interject, this one case where very
One moment.
talking of books, that is one activity where no matter how much I have tried, as we read a few pages, then the consciousness that I am the reader is definitely bound to get in. That it doesn't happen. I mean, very difficult to even imagine that we are not the readers. I mean, going by the same thing, we are not the doers. So naturally, we are not the readers. But when you read, are you able to keep that consciousness?
No. Wait a minute. What is happening? Reading is happening. And part of the reading is the arising of questions of what you read about. So questions will arise. You don't ask questions. Therefore, different questions will arise in different minds as each one reads the book. The questions arise. The mind doesn't create the question. Questions arise.
Don't we have certain purpose in life? What is the purpose, goal of life?
To be happy.
To be happy.
That's why there's a book recently, a recent one. Pursue happiness and get enlightened. The usual master tells you, pursue enlightenment and be happy. Maybe they read it, they might be getting red in the face. Because happiness is our very nature. Why is anyone seeking happiness? Because it is our very nature. Our very nature is not duality. Therefore, duality, me and the other, that duality wants to be the unicity or the singularity of the, which is happiness.
But then what is nature should be natural. Like nature of milk is, what is nature? Nature should be natural, as I said. So, for milk, its nature is shubhrata, whiteness, just as the nature of sugar is sweetness.
Yeah.
It's inborn in that.
So,
but then why, in general, when we see human beings, happiness is not so commonly seen?
We have lost it.
happiness is your real nature,
Yeah.
which you are seeking. Happiness is the real nature of the soul, which you are seeking.
But if my real nature, then why do I have to seek? That's what I'm asking.
Because you are only an identified consciousness. You are not the soul. You are a three-dimensional object. You are a three-dimensional object. And whatever the three-dimensional object wants is as an ego. Okay? Right.